Welcome, Survival of the Fittest. I'm MK Kilmarnock, and I'm your host. Welcome to the next joy and life-filled episode of MK's Mouth. Today, we're going to be going over Lumioso's topic, that being character planning. Specifically, how much can a handler, or should a handler, plan their character's story ahead of time? And does over or under planning, how does that affect a character's story? Now, not to steal the politician's response here, but that's a really, really good question. Because, of course, the story is one of the most integral parts to a character, if not the most. It's pretty much the whole thing, the body, the meat of how a character reads. A character who doesn't really have a story, who just wanders around and does random things and dies without really accomplishing any sort of task, whether it be external, killing someone, or internal, coming to terms with their own impending demise, for lack of a better phrase. If they don't accomplish anything, then there's really nothing left to have that character stick in our mind. So, because we want a well-crafted story for the character, how much planning should we do to make sure that it's well done? Now, this raises the interesting point of there being two ways a handler can do this. And by two ways, I mean there's a sliding line of planning and making shit up as you go along. And you could be anywhere on this line. Also, you're going to have to forgive me, I don't have my cheat sheet of my computer screen. I'm doing this downstairs because my roommate's sleeping, and I really wanted to get this video to you on time. So, again, timeline, super planned, I don't even know what the fuck I'm doing. And you could be anywhere on this line in terms of preparation. Maybe you've got a couple points in place. Maybe you have a couple more. Maybe you have an outline of what your character should be doing, minus all the minute details. And maybe you've planned out every single little bit of your character's actions with the other handlers that you're going to be interacting with before they actually do it. Alright, so I guess we'll start by exploring along the timeline. Having been on both sides of this, hopefully I will be able to speak freely and accurately about how this works, but some handlers prefer to write their characters on the fly. I've got Jacob Smithyton here, and he drops on the island, and he's dropped somewhere on the docks, and Jacob's weapon is a fire axe. Now, having absolutely no preparation going into the game, out of character-wise, I have Smithy put in an open thread, and he wanders around for a bit, and the reason why there's a difference between... Sit still, MK. The reason why there's such a major difference between this sort of planning and no planning at all, or this sort of story and no story at all, is that doing everything on the fly, without any planning whatsoever, you can still construct a story. You're just making the shit up as you go. You're being a bard. You're being Homer. But you're still making a story, so it's important not to confuse doing things on the fly with not crafting a story. You're just doing it with no prior planning, therefore you're pulling improv. It's improv minus comedy, for the most part. And you can craft a story just as well by doing this than if you'd planned out every minor detail. So I've got someone else, Awesome McCoolface, and I've already planned out ahead of time with another handler that he's going to wake up next to this other handler's character, and they're going to be waking up in the infirmary, and they're going to wonder what happened to them, and they're going to maybe have a bit of discussion here, a bit of discussion there. We don't really need to worry about all the minor details, too minor anyway. And then maybe we'll, we discussed that maybe we'll have a bit of a skirmish because we're confused, we're lost, we're possibly drugged. Realize that the chances of survival are better if we stick together. Many of you are probably listening to this and realizing that the story sucks. Well, yeah, that's because I just made it up off the top of my head, and I'm tired, and I don't care. But in this example, you're thinking this up ahead of time. You've got plot A, or point A, point B, point C, and then there's this blank space in between. Or you could go balls deep, and you could just say, I want to plan every little detail and talk it out, then write it down, then post it. So those are basically the three stages where you've got by the seat of your pants, in between, and then you're setting this by the editor several times. As to how much should a handler plan ahead, Lemmy? Really, I could not suggest any method over the other. All three, or either method or any sort of in-between, has shown itself to be capable of producing a wonderful character and a wonderful story. So there's really no way to say, well, if you plan every single little bit out, obviously it's going to be better than if you just did it. Maybe it'll be more complex and comprehensive and full of twists and turns that were collaborated on, but it wouldn't be explicitly better. So you could do it any way. You could plan it, or you could just decide to go unplanned. Under-planning, over-planning. Now, to handle the second part of this question, maybe I've already answered this a little bit. How much does under-planning and over-planning change a character's story? And, well, it does change it a lot. I guess the best way to be putting this is to use the example of private threads by Collective Grown right now, is from the site. We had a bit of a problem with private threads, and I was one of the major contributors. I know all of Ivan's threads were private, it seems, these days. When you have a private thread, you have all the space in the world, your own little locked away section of the island to do your planning that no unplanned factors can interrupt. So how this affects the character's story is that you have complete control. No one can enter unless you say they can. Therefore, no one's going to come in and propose any sort of mystery element or unplanned element to your story. This might allow you to write a bit more complex because you don't have to take as much into account. You can set the setting far more strict and finite because there aren't those other characters running about. You can plan ahead several stages if your character is in multiple private threads. Again, to relate this to me and how I can relate this back to the topic is, Ivan was all private. Maybe out of all the threads he was in, he might have been in 2 public ones, and that is a high estimate. And this allowed Greg and I to plan ahead with Ivan and Tabby every step of the way, almost, where we wanted them to be next, what we wanted them to do. One of our forays into a public thread didn't work out too great with everyone joining at about the same time. That was kind of a mess, but we needed a public thread here and there. But it was a bit too much. I admit my mistakes. Looking back, a bit more unplanning would have been nice and fun. It would have been spontaneous and random. But I don't feel like what we did hurt the story much from what it could have been. But how it changes the story is that you have a lot of control. So if you need someone who if you have a character who needs their story to include lots of elements that could be fucked up if someone enters or dies near them at the wrong place or wrong time, you probably want to put a bit more planning into that. and maybe hitch a private thread or two. Please don't take 7. Don't be me. Don't be that guy. When you think this chair would be comfy, it's not, guys. When you take the more spontaneous route, what you're doing is kind of taking a spin of the roulette wheel. The trickiness here is that you could get a character who wanders around the island and does nothing, as we put up in our worst case scenario. Or you can get a character who, through no planning, mind you, no hard planning, all of a sudden elements tend to fall into place and you react on the spot with characters who enter, characters who die, characters who attack you. None of this without any prior out-of-game knowledge. So if you're the type of person who can react on this and sort of just go with the flow until a story clicks into place, and it does happen, then that might be the method for you. How this changes the character's story is that it's spontaneous and might have a bit of an erratic flow, but it's fast-paced. It's a bit more actiony, less introspective, unless you force some of the introspect there, which isn't that hard. I mean, no one can fuck up a soliloquy. Well, what I mean is, if you make a long post including a mental thought to open a topic, no one can interrupt the mental thought. Yet. Maybe we'll have some sort of Inception bullshit going on, V5. But yeah, this was the method I did with Felicia, and some people would argue that story turned out better than Ivan's. Some would argue the opposite. And I think that both methods are great. They're both viable. The stuff that I like about less planning is things can happen that you haven't thought of, and sometimes those things you haven't thought of are going to be better than what you could have thought of. So it's not too bad to release that grip, or the grip of control on your character's story, and let things happen. Let you be surprised the way your character's surprised, and then work with it, deal with it. You know, just let it go. Overall, keeping the iron grip of the Fuhrer, or being chill, man, it shouldn't affect the character's story to an adverse effect, because this being the survival of the fittest community, no one's going to just it's not like everyone's going to random kill you every step of the way, or attempt to random kill you every step of the way. People are willing to write a story with you. They're willing to craft your story if you help craft theirs. You know, scratch your back, scratch mine. So I guess why this question was so tricky to answer was because there's no right or wrong answer. There just isn't. There's under planning and over planning really have no benefit over one another. Personal preference. I prefer to plan a few steps ahead and have a basic outline, and then as littler events happen, I fill in the small details, and if I have to switch a thing up or two, I do. That works for some people, doesn't work for others. Some refuse to do planning. They might just, you know, I've got my characters on the island, let's do this shit, let's go. I'll react as the punches come. And it's all admirable, all of it. I like it all. So that pretty much sums up this topic for now. I can't really think of anything more to say. But I am going to leave you with this. On the YouTube options below, you're going to see that closed captioning thing down there. I advise you to try and get that working. Just click on it and mess around with the options to try to get the closed captions to pop up, because I've watched a few videos with the automatic closed captioning on, and what YouTube thinks I'm saying is fucking hilarious compared to what I'm really saying. So give it a shot. You won't be disappointed. As for the next topic, just check the description below. I'm going to go back upstairs and pick a topic. So it's going to be in the description, and I'll see you next week, hopefully with no further delays. Ciao.